people to hold jointly a testimony of war and atomic survivors or a discussion of international political issues by youth. As far as we know, there is no nuclear-free local authority in South Korea. But it seems the recognition about local authorities' role in disarmament and security has more developed in South Korea, in particular as Mayor for Peace expands. As we have already established cooperation among civil society and parliamentarians in Japan and South Korea, we believe it is possible to do the same regarding local authorities. The first initiative can be a joint declaration by mayors in Japan and South Korea, which calls for the promotion of a Northeast Asia nuclear weapon-free zone. We would like to propose to have an international conference to strengthen cooperation among local authorities in both countries next year. The city of Daegu in South Korea, which is a sister city of Hiroshima City, can be a venue. We will begin preparation for this. At first, we would like to talk to Hiroshima Peace Culture Center. Mr. Steve Reaper came to this workshop. Now he went to but we can talk to Steve Reaper. Now let's move on discussion with the floor. We hope everyone here to share your ideas and proposals with us. Thank you.
So, because we started so late, it's already over 12:30, so we don't have enough time. So I want to have discussion time until 1 o'clock. Is it okay? Okay. Yes. Okay. Then from now on, I want to open this floor and get your questions. So when you have if you have a question, raise your hand and please present your name and affiliation. Okay.
Thank you, Maria King, for conducting an excellent meeting. My name is Myra Gomez. I'm with Parliamentarians for Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament. And in the spirit that Mayor Bob Harvey recognized Rangatira, I would like to begin recognizing Mik Young Lee from Korea, one of our co-presidents, as well as Mr. Hideo Hiraoka, who have been spearheading the parliamentarian leadership on the Northeast Asia nuclear-free zone. And I want to remind everyone in the room that often we talk about the Latin American and Caribbean nuclear weapons-free zone, the Treaty of Tlatelolco. When that came about, it was at the height of the Korean War. It wasn't because we were all happy and feeling safe. The Cuban Missile Crisis had just passed. We were all at the brink of another nuclear catastrophe. And although Cuba didn't enter Tlatelolco until 2002, the process did begin within that context. So there is hope for not just the Northeast Asia weapons-free zone, but all of the other ones, including the Arctic, who would hopefully take us to a nuclear-free world. And then I also want to follow suit on what Mayor Bob Harvey has spoken about the indigenous peoples as possible also needed to be included in these tables, in these debates. And I want to salute Mayor Taue for having hosted us last year in a Mayors for Peace conference in Nagasaki. When I was in Nagasaki, it was my first time I heard Hibakusha's testimony. And it was very sad and it was very heart-wrenching. However, sadly for me, it was not the first time I'd heard those testimonies. The first time I heard those testimonies were with indigenous peoples that were victims of the beginning of the nuclear fuel cycle, the mining of uranium. The most bombarded nation in the world is the Shoshone Nation, because that is where the U.S. nuclear test sites are held in Nevada. I went to communities in the southwest of the United States, in the Dene Nation, where genocide had happened, where most young women were sterile because of the mining of the uranium. And when I came back and reported at the Southwest Indigenous Forum of uranium issues, and I was happy and was told them what had happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, many of them cried and said, when you go back to Nagasaki, when you go back to Japan, please tell the Hibakusha that our elders are suffering because the uranium that was extracted here was used to make their bombs. And so indigenous people of all over the world have been organizing at the UN Permanent Forum for Indigenous Issues. And year after year, we call on the respect of the rights of Mother Earth, on the respect of just human rights, the collective human rights not to be bombed. And so I think I really want to extra, double, triple support what Barbara Harvey's saying, not just on the testing, but on the beginning of the nuclear-free cycle, and include that on the table. Thank you very much. And next, question or comment? Yes.
Yes. One question to Alan Ware and one question to Scott Bruce.
Okay.
My question to Alan Ware is about how do you see the prospect in this NPT review conference about possibility of advancement of the discussion on nuclear weapon-free zone or related issue, negative security assurance or reducing the role of nuclear weapons? Because in my understanding, the U.S. new nuclear posture review, it's very much focused on the reducing of the role of nuclear weapons in security policies, and in its relation, it's focused on the strengthened negative security assurance. And also the P5 is now talking about Middle East nuclear weapon-free zone. So do you see any good atmosphere among the diplomats in this meeting and conference about concrete and the possibility of the concrete improvement on the discussion? That's one question. And another question to Scott is about Korea-Japan zone idea. The typical resistance against the nuclear weapon-free zone idea in Northeast Asia is that, hey, we see the threat from North Korea, so in response to that, we have to retain the nuclear deterrence. That's the very typical discussion both in Korea and Japan. So how would you argue that Korea-Japan zone would facilitate North Korean denuclearization? To persuade that point, of course, as a peace activist, to me, I have a moral case. We should not rely on nuclear weapons. But more on practical security terms, how would you persuade those security experts who believe that retention of nuclear deterrence is needed to address North Korean threat?
Okay, then Alvin, first you can answer, and then Scott, please.
Thank you. It's a very important question. Nuclear weapon-free zones are acknowledged in the Non-Proliferation Treaty, but they're not in a real strong way. It just sort of affirms the rights of states to establish nuclear weapon-free zones in their regions, but it doesn't really put it down as an aspiration of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. In general, the discussions and deliberations on nuclear weapon-free zones do not really take place in the context of the NPT Review Conference, with one exception, and that's the Middle East. The Middle East takes place because it relates to another aspect of the treaty, universality, and the fact that there are a number of countries in the region that are states parties to the NPT, and one country in the region, Israel, that's not a party to the NPT. And so the way that a number of the governments, and this includes Egypt, has been putting this forward, and Iran as well, but supported by a lot of the Arab countries in the region, in order to move towards universality, or move towards Israel scaling back its nuclear capacity is the proposal for a Middle East nuclear weapon-free zone, which has actually been expanded now to a Middle East